10,000 years ago, a wild animal walked into a human settlement, and nobody invited it in. No one threw a rope around its neck. No one trapped it, caged it, or bred it for a purpose. It simply walked in on its own, decided to stay, and never really left. That animal was the cat. And to this day, many scientists argue that humans never actually domesticated the cat at all. The cat domesticated itself. That single idea changes everything we think we know about our relationship with the animal sitting on the windowsill right now. Every other animal living alongside us today, the dog, the cow, the horse, the sheep, was shaped by human hands, generation after generation, bred for loyalty, labor, or food. But the cat took a different path. And understanding why might tell us something surprising about instinct, trust, and the quiet decisions animals make when survival is on the line. So what really happened? Why would a solitary, independent predator choose to live beside the one species capable of destroying it? The grain problem. To understand the mystery, we have to go back roughly 10,000 years to the Fertile Crescent, a stretch of land curling through what is now Iraq, Syria, and parts of Turkey. This is where humans first began farming in large numbers, growing wheat and barley instead of chasing it across the land. Farming solved one problem and created another. Once humans started storing grain, they created something the natural world had never seen before in such concentration, a stockpile of food sitting still in one place all year round. Rodents noticed immediately. Mice and rats poured into these early granaries, drawn by the easiest meal they would ever find. And where rodents gather in large numbers, a predator is never far behind. Wildcats, small, tawny, sharp-eyed hunters closely related to the African wildcat, Felis silvestris libica, began showing up at the edges of these settlements. They weren't hunting humans. They weren't hunting livestock. They were hunting the rodents that were hunting the grain. And this is where the story takes its first unexpected turn. A predator that chose peace. Most wild predators avoid humans. It's a rational fear. Humans throw stones, set fires, and defend territory. But something about this particular arrangement was different. The wildcats that tolerated closer contact with people gained a massive advantage: a reliable food source, protection from larger predators, and shelter near human dwellings. Natural selection did the rest. Over generations, the wildcats that were calmer, less reactive, and more comfortable near humans survived and reproduced more successfully than the ones that fled or attacked. This is a process biologists call self-domestication, no human breeding program required. The animal effectively selected itself for tameness, simply by choosing to stay close. Scientists weren't expecting to find such clear genetic evidence of this until decades of research finally caught up with the theory. In 2007, a large genetic study led by evolutionary biologist Carlos Driscoll examined DNA samples from cats across Europe, Asia, and Africa. The results pointed to something remarkable. Nearly every domestic cat alive today can trace its ancestry back to a small population of Near Eastern wildcats from that same region, the Fertile Crescent, around the exact time farming began. The timing wasn't a coincidence. The cats had followed the grain, but that wasn't the biggest surprise. Here's where the story gets strange. Unlike dogs, whose skeletons changed dramatically under domestication, smaller teeth, floppier ears, altered skull shapes, the domestic cat's body barely changed at all. A modern house cat's skeleton is nearly identical to that of its wild ancestor. Cats can still interbreed with wild cats today. Their hunting instincts, night vision, and territorial behavior remain almost fully intact. In other words, the cat allowed itself to live among us, but it never fully surrendered its wild identity. It kept one paw in our world and one paw in the wilderness. Researchers studying animal behavior have long noted that this makes cats biologically unusual among domesticated species. Dogs were bred over thousands of years for obedience and cooperation. Cats were never bred for obedience at all. They were simply tolerated. And in return, they tolerated us. That raises an uncomfortable question. If cats never needed us to survive and never were forced into submission, then why do millions of them today sleep in our beds, wait by our doors, and seek out our attention? A different kind of bargain. To understand how unusual this arrangement really is, it helps to picture the two paths side by side. Imagine a wolf, thousands of years ago, drawn toward the warmth of a human campfire and the scraps left behind after a hunt. Over centuries, humans began actively shaping that relationship. They chose which wolves could stay near the group. They favored the calmer pups, the ones that followed commands, the ones useful for guarding or herding. Slowly, deliberately, humans bred an entirely new animal out of the wolf. The dog became, in a very real sense, a human invention. Now imagine the wildcat at the edge of the grain store. No one selected which cats could approach and which could not. No one bred them for any task beyond the one they were already doing naturally, hunting rodents, something they would have done with or without human settlements nearby. Humans didn't shape the cat's behavior, they simply stopped chasing it away. This distinction matters more than it might first appear. It means the modern house cat is essentially a wild animal that opted into human company, generation after generation, without ever being forced to change who it fundamentally was. The evidence beneath our feet. The clearest proof of this ancient partnership came not from a laboratory, but from the ground. In 2004, archaeologists excavating a Neolithic burial site on the island of Cyprus made a discovery that stunned the field. Buried in a grave dating back roughly 9,500 years was a human skeleton site, and just inches away, deliberately placed, was the skeleton of a cat. Cyprus has no native wildcat population. That means humans had to have carried this animal across open water by boat, long before cats were formally considered domesticated anywhere in the historical record. Why would early humans go to that kind of trouble for an animal that provided no meat, no milk, no labor? The Cyprus burial suggested something deeper than utility. It suggested companionship. It suggested that even in the earliest days of this relationship, cats weren't just pest control. They were already becoming something closer to family. Egypt enters the story. Thousands of years later, in ancient Egypt, this relationship evolved into something the world had never seen before: reverence bordering on worship. Egyptian farmers depended heavily on their grain stores along the Nile, and cats once again proved essential in controlling the rodent population. But Egyptian culture took the relationship several steps further. Cats appeared in tomb paintings, sitting beneath the chairs of nobility. Bronze statues shaped like cats were crafted with extraordinary care. The goddess Bastet, often depicted with a feline head, became one of the most widely worshipped deities in Egyptian religion, associated with protection, fertility, and the home. Killing a cat in ancient Egypt, even by accident, could carry severe consequences under certain periods of Egyptian law. When a beloved cat died of natural causes, some households were said to shave their eyebrows as a mark of mourning. At sites like Bubastis, archaeologists have uncovered enormous numbers of mummified cats, preserved with the same careful ritual reserved for royalty. This wasn't simple superstition. It reflected a culture that had come to see the cat as something sacred, an animal that had chosen to live among them on its own terms, and had never fully explained why. Trade routes only deepened the mystery. As Egyptian ships carried goods across the Mediterranean, cats sometimes traveled along with them, not as cargo, but as valued members of the crew. Sailors quickly discovered that a cat aboard a ship meant fewer rats gnawing through rope, grain, and wooden hulls. Historical accounts from later Greek and Roman traders describe cats being smuggled or purchased at considerable expense, since Egypt was reluctant to let its sacred animals leave its borders. Slowly, through these ports and trade routes, the cat began spreading across the ancient world, city by city, harbor by harbor, without ever losing its independent nature. The real mystery, though, appeared long after Egypt fell. The long silence. As civilizations shifted across Europe during the medieval period, the cat's reputation took a darker turn. Cats, particularly black cats, became associated in some regions with superstition, witchcraft, and bad luck. Historical records suggest that in certain periods, cat populations in parts of Europe were deliberately reduced due to these fears. Some historians have proposed a chilling secondary effect. With fewer cats controlling rodent populations, disease-carrying rats may have spread more easily through European cities. This theory remains debated among historians, and the evidence is far from conclusive. But it raises an eerie possibility that turning against this animal may have carried consequences far beyond superstition. Despite centuries of shifting human attitudes, the cat endured. It never depended on human approval to survive. It hunted, it adapted, it waited. And eventually, humanity's relationship with the cat began to shift once again, this time toward the strange, deep affection so many people feel today. What science is only beginning to understand. In recent decades, researchers have turned their attention to a new question. If cats never needed emotional bonds with humans to survive, why do they appear to form them anyway? A widely cited 2019 study conducted at Oregon State University, led by animal behaviorist Kristen Vitale, tested how cats respond to their owners using a method borrowed from attachment research originally designed for human infants and dogs. The results showed that a majority of cats displayed clear signs of secure attachment to their owners, seeking comfort, checking in for reassurance, and relaxing more easily once their person returned to the room. This challenged a long-standing myth that cats are simply indifferent to their owner's presence. The data suggested something closer to genuine emotional bonding, even if cats express it far more subtly than dogs do. Other research has shown that cats can recognize their owner's voice among strangers, though they often choose not to react outwardly, a finding that surprised researchers at the University of Tokyo when they tested feline responses to recorded voices in a 2013 study. The cat's brains registered recognition, their bodies simply chose not to show it. That single detail may explain more about the cat's nature than anything else in this story. The cat listens, the cat knows. The cat simply decides, on its own terms, whether to respond. The slit pupil clue. There's another detail buried in the cat's biology that evolutionary scientists find fascinating, and it has nothing to do with behavior at all. Researchers studying predator eyes across dozens of species have noticed a striking pattern. Ambush predators that hunt close to the ground, like cats, tend to have vertical, slit-shaped pupils. Taller predators that chase prey across open distances, like wolves, tend to have round pupils instead. A study published in the journal Science Advances in 2015 by vision scientist Martin Banks proposed that this shape gives low-crouching hunters a sharper sense of exact distance, which matters enormously when timing a sudden pounce from the grass. That single anatomical detail is a quiet reminder that the modern house cat, however comfortable it seems curled up on a couch, still carries the eyes, the reflexes, and the instincts of a hunter built for ambush. Domestication in this case changed almost nothing about the animal's core machinery. It only changed where that machinery was allowed to rest. A partnership built on choice. Perhaps that is the real answer to the mystery. Dogs were shaped by us. Cats decided to walk alongside us, and have kept deciding every single day since, for 10,000 years. No leash forced that first wildcat into the grain stores of the Fertile Crescent. No human hand guided its descendants onto a boat bound for Cyprus. No law demanded that Egyptian families mourn a creature that gave them nothing but companionship and pest control. At every stage of this ancient story, the cat had a way out. It could have returned to the wild at any moment. Many still do, becoming feral within a single generation when the bond breaks. And yet, across 10 millennia and dozens of civilizations, enough cats have chosen to stay that an entire species now lives suspended between two worlds, wild enough to survive without us, tame enough to sleep beside us. Scientists are still debating exactly what draws an animal that doesn't need us to keep choosing us anyway. Some researchers point to early socialization in kittenhood. Others point to the sheer convenience of an easy meal. But neither explanation fully accounts for the quiet, specific bond so many cat owners describe, the sense that their cat is not simply present, but paying attention. So the next time a cat that has never once depended on you for its survival walks across the room, sits down beside you, and rests its head against your hand, it's worth pausing on the strangeness of that moment. Nothing forced this animal to be here. It simply decided you were worth staying for, and after 10,000 years, no one has ever fully figured out why.